once again to discuss things.
Anyway, let's go ahead and jump in, shall we?
Sure.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I am the god of podcasts, Sid Part 2.
And I am his jealous brother he sent to hell.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
that's what we do now.
Yeah, nice. In this episode of Geeky Gentlemen, we are beginning Geeky Gentlemen History Month. Here it is, folks. Get ready. The month in which we discuss the contributions Geeky Gentlemen have made to history, but have been ignored by biased educational system, except not at all.
I love it every time.
I will never, ever get tired of that joke.
This is like the fourth time.
Yeah, I know.
I love it.
Anyway, this is our first Geeky Gentleman History Month where we've been doing character discussions, and so our rule for character discussions shall be they either have to be at least, their original work has to be at least 100 years old, or they have to be consistently set within a particular era of history. Okay. So, we are beginning with Zeus, god of Olympus. And, yeah. So, where's a good spot to start on Zeus?
So, I feel like the go-to place for a lot of discussions on Zeus is that, despite what Disney may have taught us, the gods in Greek mythology are all kinds of assholes, and Zeus is the ultimate asshole. Particularly because of how many demigods spawn from him just randomly raping women. Mm-hmm. And then how jealous random women would get of other women that were raped by Zeus, and how Zeus wouldn't give a shit about any of them. So I think what Greek mythology in general I think is interesting, but I think it's less interesting when you focus on the main pantheon, and it's more interesting when you focus on like the individual stories and the demigods and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So like Zeus is, I think, a lot more interesting in relation to how certain demigods in mythology view their relationship to him. Like, I really like the story of Perseus because of his relationship to Zeus, and I really like how they're like that. Him as a kid's got in the stuff that he appears in. He doesn't really like have any father issues. Then he kills his dad because he's destined to kill his dad, except not really, and then finds out his dad is actually Zeus, and he doesn't like have any sort of loyalty to the Greek gods for that very weird reason. Like, he's almost like an angsty emo Zeus child, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I think Zeus's most interesting aspect is just how the other characters have to deal with him. Because, like, there aren't a lot of Zeus stories, is the interesting thing. There's, like, you know, when you think, like, the myths of the gods, the Zeus story is the destruction of the Titans. That is Zeus's story. Like, Zeus pops up in all these other stories, but, like, the story of Zeus is how he defeated his father Kronos, and by extension the Titans, and got his other brothers and sisters free, the gods, and blah, 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 blah. But, like the only other specific Zeus story I can think of that only has anything to do with Zeus is when he saw a boy who was, like, super cute, and he took the form of a giant eagle, swept the boy up, and brought him to Olympus to be their wine steward. So he's just like, hey, this boy is, like, super cute, so he's going to, like, serve us wine for all eternity. So it's a good move. Yeah, it's just generally good to know that Zeus is kind of like an equal opportunity, you know, abductor, rapist, murderer.
Yeah, equal opportunity sex offender.
Yeah. So you got to give him that. He's not exactly he's not a chauvinist when it comes to his awfulness.
Whatever that will grant him.
Yeah. So like those are the only two Zeus stories I can think of. But then there are all these other stories where, like, Zeus basically cameos, and they get really weird. Like, the birth of Dionysus, which is, of course, Dionysus' story, of course, features Zeus, because if you are ever asked who a character in Greek mythology is, and you don't know at all, if you say child of Zeus, you have, like, at least a 2/3 chance to be right.
Yeah, so, honestly.
The story of Dionysus is interesting because, like, okay, so Zeus sleeps with a woman, and she goes and tells all her friends that she slept with Zeus, and all her friends are like, no, you didn't, you dumb whore. You slept with some guy who was saying he was Zeus. You're an idiot. And she goes back to Zeus, she's like, no, you have to, like, let me see you as Zeus, because otherwise, you know, they won't believe me, and I need to know that you're actually Zeus and not just some guy. And he's like, if I show you, then you'll die because you can't look on my true form. And she's like, no, I must. That's not going to happen. Zeus like, all right, fuck it, fine. And he turns into Zeus, at, like, his full form, and she instantly burns up and dies on the spot, but she was already pregnant with their child. So, like, because Dionysus in her womb was the child of a god, he was, like, not fully formed, but he was the only thing that wasn't destroyed by the presence of Zeus. So Zeus just, like, picked up the little fetus of Dionysus, stitched him into his thigh, which, if you didn't know, contains all of the same reproductive systems that a woman's uterus has. A man's thigh, exactly same, 1-to-1 as a woman's uterus. Stitched Dionysus into his thigh, and then 9 months later, he popped the fuck out of Zeus's thigh. It's just like, and there's some really weird art of that. Like, the Greeks are so bad at visualizing. They have these really cool stories, but then they're so bad at visualizing this shit because you have this birth of Dionysus thing, and it's just like a little tiny man. Like, it's a guy, but he's just like proportioned, very tiny, popping out of Zeus's thigh.
Pottery art, or it didn't happen.
So, like, yeah, that's another Zeus story where he's, like, really prevalent to the story, but it's not really about Zeus. It's about the birth of Dionysus. It's about this lady. And it's, I don't know, you're right. It's so weird to talk about Zeus on his own. I didn't really think that through. I was just like, oh, it'll be fun to talk about Zeus because he's
I mean, it's a cool segue to talk about, like, Greek mythology in general, but, like, that's always been my hang-up with Zeus is that, like, Zeus is fine in that he's the instigator for everything else that's really cool and really interesting. Like, Greek mythology, there are so many competing accounts, and there are so many stories. There's so many, like, weird interconnected relationships. I'm sure if you go to Wikipedia, you can probably, like, pull up a list of people that count as children of Zeus. But if you go on any other website, I'm sure they'll like, disagree on which one's true and which one isn't. Mm-hmm. So, like, that kind of thing is just really fun. The story of the Titans is interesting in that, like, I feel like you say it's Zeus' story, and it is in that he kills his dad. But I feel like Kronos is the most interesting part of that, just because he's the only one that seems to have, like, any sort of motivation.
Well, I mean, he kills, like, it's the same story. It's like, it's almost like they just decided to do a reboot. It's like a
mythology rebirth.
Well, not even rebirth. The proper thing to go to is Marvel right now, because we just got the whole reboot that, like, Marvel did its first reboot, and then Secret Empire happened, and they're like, okay, Marvel Legacy now. Fuck. No, but, like, you know, the story is exactly the same. Uranus and Gaia have children. Uranus is, wary of his children, and so he treats them poorly and, locks up the Cyclopses, all these other things. And Gaia doesn't like that, so she hides Kronos away and gives Kronos a knife, and Kronos, castrates Uranus, and then Kronos rules as the Titans, and then he's given a prophecy that says, oh, you will be killed by your son as you killed Kronos, so he starts eating all his babies, and then Zeus is hidden away by Gaia, and then Zeus kills Kronos and frees all the gods, and then Zeus tries to break the cycle in a really interesting way by, with his he is given the prophecy that your firstborn shall kill you. So he doesn't marry Hera, who he wants to marry. He marries another goddess and then has sex with her. And then when he knows she's pregnant, kills the both of them. So he doesn't have to worry about it.
And he also has a kid with his mom at one point. I forget who that is.
It's weird. Like the interesting thing to talk about is how many modern interpretations of Greek mythology and of Zeus there are. We did an episode just before this about before Horror and History Month started up with Kratos, and that's a pretty particular modern interpretation of Zeus. I really, really like Brian Azzarello's New 52 Wonder Woman run. It is a really, really interesting story and deals with a lot. And the main villain of that book is Zeus's firstborn. It says that story is bullshit. Zeus took his firstborn and buried him in the center of the earth. And, it all, the impetus of it all is, well, he finally crawled out. It took him a couple thousand years to get there.
No doubt.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to look at all the modern interpretations, and one of the other brilliant things about Brian Azzarello's run was the just needle-sharp dialogue that book had. And, there's this great conversation between Hera and Eros, or Strife, and she says, "There's a price for loving my husband," in reference to, if you have sex with my husband, I am going to come fucking kill you. But then Strife just comes in and she goes, "Yes, and no one knows that price better than you." It's like, ouch! God damn!
Mic drop.
Right? That is such a brilliant and pointed thing, and it gets the idea of the bullshit that Zeus has put upon the gods that he lives with, particularly his wife Hera, because Hera is infamous for doing all these horrible things, particularly to Hercules, with, driving him mad and forcing him to kill his family several times over, because she doesn't like the fact that Zeus had a child with someone else. So in the Iliad, Hera wants to help Achilles at one point. So she goes down to the battlefield and looks all sexy, and Zeus sees her, and he's like, damn! And so he runs down there, he's like, "I want to have sex with you right now, Hera." And she goes, "Here on the battlefield, come on." And he's like, "No, you don't understand." And then he just goes through a list of all the women that he has cheated on Hera for. And he's like, "More than I wanted to have sex with this woman I cheated you on, I want to have sex with you more than that right now. This woman I cheated with you on, I want to have sex with you more than I did right then." And he just goes through this list, and then he compounds it by adding all the children that he's had with these various women.
Smooth,
right? That's how you really put the moves on the ladies, fellas. If you're taking notes. Zeus is the epitome of toxic masculinity.
He's basically Ashton Kutcher from that 70s show.
Right? So Zeus just has all these interesting things about him where he is such a freaking dipshit. He is the frat boy of the Greek pantheon. It's hilarious. Zeus is the epitome of toxic masculinity. What's the other one? Because I feel like the best way to talk about Zeus, just talk about the stories that involve Zeus, and this is how you get a character. Because he is, as fucked as the continuity of Greek mythology is, Zeus is one of the most consistently characterized people.
That's just when anything goes wrong, it's probably Zeus's fault.
Yeah, people love him and talk about how great he is, but he's always the reason that this shit happens. All right, there's the really famous story of, Hades kidnapping Persephone, and that's why we have winter. When the goddess of the hearth, whose name escapes me at the moment, comes to Zeus and says, "What? Hades took my daughter. You have to do something about this." And Zeus goes, "Oh, well, I told him it was cool because he's my brother." And you can just imagine this conversation if you imagine Zeus as a frat boy. It's like, what? He's my bro. I mean, yeah, he's a little gothy and stuff, but still, he's my bro. He's cool. He's a great husband for your daughter.
See, this is the Greek letter connection. This is where it all comes from.
I mean, right? It's like all of the frat boys are like, well, we're just doing what Zeus does, it's whatever.
They're not wrong. Not one thing in their entire existence, they are not wrong.
Yep, there you go. Okay, so like I think an interesting place to go, or it's going to get us off of stories, is why do you think it is that Zeus gets treated as heroic and loved and beloved, even though he is the impetus for all this awful shit?
Well, I think it's twofold. I think it's, one, everything's Disney's fault. Because, I mean, never underestimate the power of that image of the Hercules movie, mostly because we always say Hercules instead of Heracles.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that cannot be understated. But two, I feel like with a lot of this stuff, with a lot of stories in general, the content of the story is less important sometimes than with like the rituals that get enacted in trying to preserve that story, which is common in a lot of mythology. When you're talking about like Indian mythology or like Roman or whatever, like more like Southeast Asian and stuff like that, the sort of pantheons of gods they have are more of like a balance on each other. So no one's like the definitive leader. No one has like a definitive standing. Everyone sort of has like equal identity in all of the gods. And so it's really hard to come up with a definitive take, which is why it's hard to have any sort of like superiority. Zeus is different in that Zeus has like a really cleared center point in what his existence is. He's the king of all the gods on Olympus. The stuff that happened with Kronos happened before the stories they were telling, and the stuff that happens with his children is the stuff after that. Zeus is always that weird centered figure, and so everything gets done in relation to Zeus in like ancient mythology in the same way it almost does with like Jesus now, where like you have BC and you have AD. Everything just kind of gets centered on that one figure regardless of how good or bad they are, but because they somehow structurally become the center, it almost makes it seem like, well, that means they're the main character. That means they're the good guy. That means they're the one we're following. Regardless of how he acts, he is like an all-father Odin type. Mm-hmm. And so there's like a tendency to like think just because he's the king of gods or just because he's an all-father, he is fatherly. And those two things should not be confused, but they often are.
Yeah, because Zeus is an awful father. He is an awful husband. He is just an awful person by like, I mean, not even by modern standards. Like,
he was a bad Greek.
Yeah,
he was not pious. I'm sorry.
Yeah, like just by Greek standards, he fucked around a lot. It's interesting to read Plato sit there and criticize Homer's characterization of Zeus. It's like, oh, Zeus isn't like that. Well, okay, Plato, you say so.
Plato says a lot. That's why we don't listen.
Yeah, exactly. Shut up, Plato. Come back to your corner. It's my cave. We call it my cave. Anyway, no, you're right though. Like Zeus is the ultimate version of. Well, he's the central character, so he has to be the good guy. I'm trying to think of like modern examples. Like I guess Bella from Twilight, where like she does awful things, but because she's the main character, that just automatically makes her the good guy.
Well, I mean, we can go in any direction, honestly. Like Goku. Goku's the main character. He's an awful person. Doesn't matter how much good he's accomplished. He's not a good person.
Mm-hmm. Yep, definitely.
And interestingly, Goku has a very similar characterization to Disney Hercules Zeus.
I can see
that sort of like hillbilly father type.
Yeah, I can see it. What do you think of Hercules Zeus? Since that is like the version that tries to make Zeus like the best guy kind of thing.
I hate it. I hate it so much. I don't. Well, okay. So I don't like that movie very much. I feel like it's got an interesting idea at its core and then just completely collapses by the end. Mm-hmm. But Zeus in that movie, I feel like, is kind of the sitcom dad jokey type. And that's fine if the characterization, if that's the characterization you want. But like, even by those standards, he's kind of a blockhead and really bad at everything he does, and no one holds him accountable for it just because he's Zeus.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Hercules as a character is never really upset with what happens. Hera's really the only one that seems to show any sort of emotional reaction to Hercules was lost and then he's found again. It Zeus trying to instruct Hercules on what it's like to be a hero really offers him nothing at all whatsoever, and then arbitrarily decides what counts as being a hero. I don't really like how clueless that Zeus is. Like, if you want to make him like a bubbly good father, you can do that, but be consistent with it.
Mm-hmm. No, I get you. I just I don't like that movie very much either. I feel like if you're going to do a Greek mythology show, like, why this wasn't... Like, I mean, it's undeniably cool, but it's still got its problems, and I feel like you should, show both sides of it. Doing what they split it down the middle with is just... It's all over the place, I agree. But the characterization of Zeus in that in particular, I find really, really weird, because, yeah, he's, like, sitting there trying to encourage Hercules to be a true hero, but he doesn't ever tell him what he has to do, and that's a weird thing. Like, it's just poorly characterized and inconsistent, and it just kind of makes him, in a completely different way than he traditionally is, an ass.
Yep. In one case, he's a clueless ass, in the other one, he's a vindictive ass.
Right. Oh, man.
Do you have, like, any specific, like... Because, like you said, Zeus pops up more in other people's stories than he does in his own stories or has his own stories. Was there, like, a particular place where you read Zeus where he stood out? Like, I remember reading The Odyssey at some point in middle school or something, and, like, the book just kept randomly cutting to a conversation Hera and Zeus were having, and Hera was trying to, like, show some sort of, like, why this is a reason the gods need to offer more support to the humans, and Zeus kept diverting the conversation to some unrelated tangent about none of his children coming back to Olympus with him. Like, he was just petty and didn't listen to that discourse and all. And that, ever since I read that book, that's always been my characterization in my head of, like, Zeus is not necessarily a blockhead. He's just fixated on the wrong things and he knows it.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting point. I don't know. I'm trying to think of like I don't know. Zeus is, because it's fiction. It's easier to talk about on a very different level. Like, Zeus is kind of a fun blockhead to read about. Like, again, when he gets fooled by Hera into sleeping with her and says all that stupid shit about how attracted to her he is in the Iliad, that's really funny to read. Like, I feel like Homer was actually making a joke there. I don't feel like that was, unintentionally funny in a modern context. So, like, sometimes it's like that. Other times, it's kind of badass to, like, read some of the stuff Zeus does. Like, the whole defeating Kronos thing. That's kind of cool. As far as, like, a modern interpretation of Zeus that I really like, I like the God of War Zeus that we get in God of War 2 and 3. I think that, like, as flawed as those games are on a story level, that is probably the best version of just, like, a complete dick version of Zeus that we've gotten in a modern context. Like, you got, like, Clash and Wrath of the Titans that, like, kind of have him be a little out of touch and not really know what's going on, and I don't really like that. I like in God of War where he's like, what I do for Olympus. Like, he always thinks that whatever he's doing, no matter the consequences, is the right thing, and I think that's kind of a neat way to portray why Zeus is such an asshole.
Yeah, I agree with that. I have a difficulty with, like, modern interpretations of Greek mythology because I feel like there's two ends of the spectrum when it comes to talking about Greek stuff. It's the sort of sanitized Disney way of thinking about it where it's all kind of peripheral, and then there's the hyper edgy, overly violent God of War style of talking about it, where, like, very, very vindictively against the Disney interpretation, where God of War is as violent as it is because they wanted to send the message that this is not Hercules. And I kind of get bored with both sides of that, where, like, I don't want them to be bedtime stories, but I also just don't want them to, like, beat the shit out of each other just to say they're beating the shit out of each other. To
be fair, though, that's kind of what they did, though. Like...
No, I know, but I'm just saying, in a like I think there's more like story stuff that can be done that doesn't just have to be like God of War style slaughter the gods, you know?
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
Um, like there's really cool ideas in like what individual gods represent. Like Marilyn Manson's music has a lot of like invocations of Greek myths and stuff, and they're not always the obvious ones, and they kind of relate to the character arcs he's having in his particular albums, and that's cool, and I like seeing that. But like as like a actual story, like Wrath of the Titans, Clash of the Titans, both of them are much more God of War inspired. I wish we had like more of a middle ground somewhere in adapting these things.
I don't know. I feel like those, kind soften the characters up quite a bit, though.
They do, but they are undeniably action movies first, and action movies to show how badass this is.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, to be fair, Hades and Zeus fighting a Titan together was really fucking badass.
No, I agree. I'm not saying they're bad movies.
Oh no, they're bad movies, but
no, they're so much fun.
Yeah, it's fun, but it's bad fun. Anyway, all right, let's talk about design for Zeus, because this is something that, like, I feel like you could almost blame Michelangelo for this. Because when we think of our modern interpretation of what God looks like, it's always, old white guy, long beard. Yep. And that's kind of like transferred over to Zeus over the years. And the Greeks would be like so confused by that. Because
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the Greek idea of manly and divine would be guy in his 20s was like super muscular, big black beard, really voluminous hair, and is constantly naked and in really heroic poses and stuff like that. Like that would be what Zeus would look like to them. The idea of like worshiping an old man would be so counterintuitive to the ancient Greeks.
Well, I mean, Greek color schemes, Greek art, a lot of it when you restore it is noticeably, by modern standards, really tacky. Mm-hmm. So like it wouldn't even be like the whole running around in openly exposed chest and wearing just a bit of like a toga and stuff like that. Like there'd be layers to Zeus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just interesting how that all ties together and the way in which like we've changed, and it's not even like modern people. It is, I've seen depictions of Zeus from the Renaissance and stuff that are like, more in line with the Hercules version than what the Greeks would have done, and that's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very post-Christ way to talk about Zeus, that's for sure.
Yeah, where he's like got the big white beard and stuff. And then I've seen things that kind of like blend the two together, where he's like, he is all strong and young and muscular, but he's just got a white beard and hair. I'm like, oh, that's different.
I always like the idea of like integrating old godly pantheons with modern technology. And I feel like if you wanted to bring out the Greek tackiness of Zeus, you could do it as like a skinnier 20-year looking guy that's almost got like Tron style glowing clothing, because that would be tacky as fuck in a modern context, but it would still be in line with that whole sort of like sleek Greek standard of beauty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think Immortals kind of did that, where it's like it tried to get as tacky as possible with the like
Henry
gold
Cavill
armor.
movie.
Yeah, with like the gold armor and shit.
Yeah, that's true. Everything that movie was either gold or brown. It was really weird.
Yeah, it was. Recommended stuff for Zeus.
Ooh. God of War 1.
Oh, you wouldn't say God of War 2? You don't like his characterization after that?
It's not that I don't like it after that. I just feel like from the beginning of the second one, Zeus just kind of becomes an impetus to do the same game over again.
Yeah, but he doesn't really have a character in the first game. He's just kind of present.
Well, that's my thing about it. It's like I like that Zeus is a figurehead behind this, and Kratos' blaming of Ares is a direct result of Ares and Zeus' relationship and stuff like that. And I think that's more interesting than just Kratos taking on Zeus.
That's fair. I just really like the way that he's portrayed as like, really a villain, which he would be by a modern standard.
Right.
The gods are cruel.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So yeah, I'd say God of War 2, and by extension 3, since they're one story. What else? What else is like a cool or a good source for Zeus? Just read classic myth and see what you like. He pops up here and there, and some of it's kind of just hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, you won't believe the amount of Greek literature where it's just random anecdotes about Zeus and shit. The Iliad and the Odyssey break away and talk about the gods a lot.
Yep. Okay. Steve, who are we going to be talking about next time?
Next time. So, originally I was thinking about talking about Lucifer, but I feel like that'd be too much on the same sort of tangential line as Zeus. So, instead of someone like Lucifer, let's talk about, let's see. I'm going to pull up my reading list so I can figure this out in more detail. Let's talk about... okay, hang on. When was this character created?
Oh, good. You gotta do some research here to check. That's funny.
Yeah, let me just double check the date on this, because that might be kind of helpful.
Kinda.
Yeah, because I mean, I might also not want to talk about them. Who knows? Yeah. Let's see.
Take your time. People are just sitting there listening, edge of their seat right now, Steve.
They're so excited. They want to know who I'm talking about, and it's going to blow their minds as soon as I figure it out, and it blows mine. One of these is cheating because their character is that they're old.
Okay.
Yeah, let's not go with that one. Let's go with Sherlock Holmes.
Okay.
Yeah, Sherlock Holmes is a good one. Good neutral pick.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, everyone, thanks very much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
And I'm the Exile.
And we are your geeky gentlemen. And we will be discussing things.